members of the Baseball Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bambino, the Sultan of Swat, Babe Ruth. I consider myself the lucky...
First, because I was color and they were white, I mean, we could play together. I think that was my main ambition.
Mazeroski has hit a 1-0.
World swings on the 3-0 pitch.
The Dodgers are World Series champions.
The Greats of the Game looks at World Series heroes with special guest Bob Gibson.
It seems that everyone has at least one special memory of a World Series hero. Maybe that's what makes the anticipation of that 1 week in October so exciting. The 1 week when everyone waits for the emergence of a new hero to take his place in baseball's Hall of Fame. Hello, everybody. I'm Tim McCarver, and welcome to the Greats of the Game. You know, when you examine it closely, the World Series is really a remarkable American event. Every October, generations of baseball fans settle down to watch the best two teams in baseball. Fathers watch with their sons and tell stories of the times they watched with their fathers, passing on recollections about the days when the Yankees' Don Larson pitched his perfect game, or when the Mets performed their miracle against the Baltimore Orioles back in 1969. It's all part of the continuum that spans generation after generation and began in the first World Series way back in 1903.
The World Series as we know it came about when the owners of the Boston Red Sox and Pittsburgh Pirates casually challenged each other to a postseason series in 1903. The first series was a success, but that didn't convince New York Giant manager John McGraw that his National League champion should play what he called a team from an inferior league in 1904. However, McGraw's self-proclaimed world champions did give in a year later, and in 1905, the World Series continued on without any further interruption. As time went on, the series grew in popularity and stature, and by the time the Babe Ruth-led Yankees made their initial appearance in 1921, the World Series had become a national phenomenon. While the Yankees were winning in the American League, the St. Louis Cardinals were doing the same in the National, playing a raucous brand of baseball that earned them the nickname the Gas House Gang. In the 40s, Joe DiMaggio carried the torch for the Yankees as they remained the class of baseball and regular participants in the World Series. By the 1950s, the World Series seemed to have found a permanent home in New York. In the National League, the Giants won 2 pennants during the 50s and a World Championship in 1954. During those same years, the Brooklyn Dodgers won 4 National League pennants and their lone World Championship in 1955. Most of the time, both the Dodgers and Giants found themselves playing the Yankees, as New York's American League representative played in 8 out of the 10 World Series in the 1950s. When the Dodgers moved west, they took their winning ways with them and wound up playing in 4 World Series during their first 9 seasons in Los Angeles. By the late 60s, at times, it certainly changed, and so did some World Series winners, most notably the amazing Mets of 1969. Shortly after, another amazing team came forth, as the Oakland A's dominated baseball by winning 3 straight World Series in the early 70s. The Cincinnati Reds followed immediately with 2 straight of their own, as they became known as the Big Red Machine. Reggie Jackson then led the Yankees back to prominence in 1977 as they won their first World Championship in 15 years. Another dominant team of the 70s was the Pittsburgh Pirates, who won 3 pennants and 2 World Championships during a decade that was marked by its outstanding teams. Through it all, the World Series has remained paramount in the eyes of the American public. The event itself is matched only by the attention it receives, creating an atmosphere that all players strive to reach.
The criteria for any athlete is they want to find out how they're going to react when they play under the greatest pressure a player can play under in baseball, and that's the World Series or the playoffs.
The whole world is focused on the World Series. People that never watch baseball at any other time watch the World Series.
And I don't care how great a career a player has had and how many individual awards he's won. I really think that he has missed a big thing in his life if he's never played in a World Series.
It was something that brings chills to you. It makes your kidneys weak, makes your heart want to pound through your chest. Your mouth is dry. Your nervous system is all out of whack. But you know it's the greatest thing that has ever happened to you.
It's also the greatest thing that's ever happened to baseball. The World Series, a potpourri of pleasant memories.
Being in a World Series is something a baseball player never forgets. I know I was lucky enough to be in 3 of them, and each remains special for its own reasons. The first was back in 1964 when I was only 22 years old, and my Cardinals were up against the legendary Yankees of Mantle and Maris. Now that might sound intimidating, but actually it was the easiest of the 3 for me to play in. You see, I wasn't supposed to do anything earth-shattering. Funny thing is, though, I did. I hit well, and believe it or not, I actually stole home, even if it was on the back end of a double steal. Now, in 1967, I was supposed to have a good series, and I didn't, which just goes to show you, no matter who you are or how many times you've been in it, there's no way to tell how you're going to handle the pressures of a World Series.
Strange things can happen under the glare of the October sun. The madness of the moment has a way of giving all players an equal opportunity to do something special. Over the years, there have been several players who've made the most out of their special situation. One of those was the Yankees' Don Larson, a journeyman pitcher throughout his career who had the good fortune to pick Game 5 of the 1956 World Series to be perfect.
Larson would walk in, we wouldn't even talk to him, and he sat in his favorite seat where he was sitting during the game, and turned out to be a game that I'll never forget seeing, pitching a perfect game.
I'll guarantee that nobody has left this ballpark. 2 strikes and a ball. Mitchell waiting, stands deep, feet close together. Larson is ready, gets the sign. 2 strikes, ball 1. Here comes the pitch. Strike 3. A no-hitter, a perfect game for Don Larson.
Yogi ran out and he leaped up into the arms of Larson, and the place was just a bedlam. In fact, it's the only time I've ever stood up and roared myself on a broadcast.
For the Giants' Willie Mays, great performances were rather routine. Still, Mays made what is perhaps the single greatest fielding play in World Series history, off a ball hit by Vic Wertz in 1954.
There's a long drive, way back in center field, way back, it is
I'm playing left field, and I had all the doubts in the world about his ability to get there, but he did. Just a great catch. And I asked him on the way in after we got the 3 outs. I said, I didn't think you'd get to that one. You know what he told me? He said, I had it all the way. I said, you did, huh? I said, okay, that's good enough for me.
On the other hand, the Dodgers' Al Gianfrido became an unexpected and unlikely hero when he caught a ball hit by Joe DiMaggio in Game 6 of the 1947 World Series.
swung on, belted. It's a long one, deep in left center. Back for Gianfrido. Back. He makes a one-handed catch against the bullpen. Oh, doctor.
While Gianfrido is remembered for a specific play, Brooks Robinson of the Baltimore Orioles fostered his reputation on a whole series of spectacular efforts. The year was 1970, and Robinson performed a slew of acrobatic miracles against the Cincinnati Reds, including one play Robinson made against Lee May that stood head and shoulders above all the rest.
I didn't know if I had a shot at him or not. I know Lee did not run that well, and when I got the ball, I just got it and threw without even looking to see where the base was. You just know where it was, and it happened to be it bounced strike high to Boog, and it was a play that just doesn't happen many times. And I look at it and I say, gee, I mean, I can only remember one other time in my career I ever made that play just like that, and it was in a World Series.
For St. Louis Cardinal fans, the memory of Enos Slaughter is wrapped up in his mad dash that won the '46 series.
I led off the inning with a base hit. Carrasco tried to sacrifice me, and it popped up. Del Rice, he flied out to left field, and then I was stealing. And then Harry Walker, he hit this looping single into left center. Well, I said to myself, I can score. And as I rounded second, the ball was just hitting the ground in left center, and I never looked up. All I was thinking about is taking Roy Partee, the catcher, with me on into the dugout.
Slaughter's daring base running certainly accounted for one of the more spectacular finishes in series history. But for sheer last-gasp excitement, nothing could possibly match the home run hit in the bottom of the ninth of the 7th game of the 1960 World Series. The hero, Bill Mazeroski of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and his homer beat the Yankees. 15 years later, in 1975, the Boston Red Sox and the Cincinnati Reds were in the midst of what some call the greatest World Series game ever, when Carlton Fisk ended the drama.
The 1-0 delivery to Fisk. He swings, long drive, left field. If it stays fair, it's gone. Home run! The Red Sox win! And the series is tied 3 games apiece.
Although his Red Sox lost the series in Game 7, Fisk made the most of his opportunity. Like many before him, for one day in October, he was a winner.
Over the years, there have been a number of players who performed well in one World Series, but only a handful of players who performed well in more than one World Series. And our guest on the Greats of the Game today, a gentleman who performed well every time when called upon in 3 World Series, a teammate of mine for many years, Bob Gibson. Bob, welcome.
Thank you, Tim.
You pitched in 3 World Series. You were 7-2. You hold a record for most complete games with 8. Most consecutive victories with 7. What stands out in your mind as your biggest thrill in the World Series?
Well, I guess naturally I would have to say the first World Series, which was in 1964.
Against the Yankees.
Was the biggest thrill. You know, I was relatively young, and it was the first time for getting into the series, and it was just more exciting to me than the other ones that we were in.
Any particular play stand out in your mind in those 3 series?
Well, the one play that stands out, I think it was in Game 5, I'm not sure, where Joe Pepitone hit a ball back through the box and hit me in the rear end and careened off toward the third base line, and I went over, picked it up, and kind of jumped in air and threw it with the same motion and got him at first base. Of course, that was a real controversial play, but I think he was out.
Your basketball background came into play there, huh?
Well, I guess it had something to do with it. I was always trying to do something tricky anyway.
You loved it, didn't you?
Loved it.
And, of course, that play against Pepitone was so important because the next guy up, Tom Tresh, hit the 2-run home run with 2 out in the bottom of the ninth to tie it. And then, of course, in the next inning, something happened also.
Yeah, I remember that. Flood made a tremendous catch in center field.
No, I'm not. No. Tell the truth.
Oh, you're talking about the 3-run homer that you hit in the 10th inning.
I thought I'd never get it out of you.
Yeah, I remember that. That was nice.
That first series also is kind of an awesome lineup to face, wasn't it? Mantle, Maris, Pepitone, Bobby Richardson, Elston Howard.
Well, that's one advantage of being in a different league. You know, you hear about these guys, but you don't really know. And, you know, once we got over the initial shock of playing the Yankees, I think we realized that we were just as good, if not better, than the guys in the other league. And I just kind of enjoyed the competition.
In 1968, of course, the thing after that superb season, 1.12 ERA, the first game of the series against the Tigers, you struck out 17 Tigers, and that's a record that still stands today.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I remember that game just like it was yesterday, and the biggest thing that stood out in that particular game was when you came out in front of home plate after I tied Koufax's record with 15, and you were pointing at something which I always like to get the ball and
yes, I know,
throw it. Let's go. We don't have time for all of that, and you were pointing at something in which I couldn't figure it out until I looked around, and it was up on the scoreboard that I had tied Koufax's record, which at that time wasn't really important to me. All I wanted to do was get a hold of the ball and let's go. We'll talk about that later.
It's interesting that in World Series play, you're only playing a maximum of 7 games, but here you started 3 times in every series in which you performed. And you wouldn't do that over a 7-game stretch during the season, though.
Yeah, that's right. And playing against the same ball club, I think what you have to do, Tim, is the first time they see you, you go with your normal stuff, the way you pitch. The next game that you pitch against them, you might have to change it a little bit. And I think on my first game, I was throwing basically hard stuff. Second game, I mixed in a little more breaking stuff. I even threw some curveballs, which I didn't throw a lot of curveballs, change-ups every once in a while. And then in the third game that I pitched against them, I just, you're okay. You can do anything you want because they saw you the first time throwing hard stuff. The second time, you threw a little more breaking stuff. And the third time, they don't quite know what you're going to do. So I think you're just as effective on the third game as you are the first one.
Who do you think has the advantage in a World Series?
I think
a pitcher or a team hitting against them, since they both seeing each other for the first time?
I think the pitchers definitely have the advantage. Most hitters don't feel comfortable unless they know the pitcher, and you can tell that when these rookies come up and they're a little wild, and hitters don't ever want to hit off of them. They're not really sure what they're all about, and I think that in a short series like that, the pitchers usually have the upper hand.
And then, of course, it must have been terribly frustrating after the Cardinals up 3-1 against the Tigers, lose the series in '68, and, of course, the last game when Curt Flood got stuck in the mud in center field, and that was your ball game. Yeah,
one thing, Tim, people fail to realize when you're in a World Series or you're in the Olympics or you're in anything that's that caliber, the primary thing is getting there. And if you win it, fine. If you lose it, there's no reason to feel bad about it because we've done something that 20 other ball clubs in the league were trying to do, and that was to get to the World Series. So the last game in Detroit, we lost the ball game. I celebrated just being in the World Series. I had me a bottle of champagne, and I answered all the questions, about Flood and about everybody else. And it's nice to try to blame it on somebody, but I don't think that you can blame any winning and losing on one guy out there. As a team effort.
I want to tell you something, my friend. Leadership's a rare quality, and you exhibited those traits of leadership not only during the season, but in World Series play also. And I personally want to thank you for being our guest today on the Greats of the Game.
Thank you, Tim.
Bob Gibson.